Crime is a major concern in the Milwaukee area. Some crime statistics are trending downward, but instances of violence, especially gun violence, continue to dominate the headlines, impacting residents' sense of security and safety. According to the most recent Community Health Needs Assessment for Milwaukee County, violence is one of the top health issues. The Milwaukee Office of Violence Prevention has also taken a public health approach to the prevention of violence in our city. Its philosophy is that violence is a community-wide issue that can be resolved if governmental, nonprofit, and community organizations work together. Ashanti Hamilton is the director of the Milwaukee Office of Violence Prevention. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us what it means to approach violence from a public health point of view.
Well, the key to a public health approach is to recognize that violence is preventable, and that there are conditions in the community that infects people and spreads violence throughout the community. And so that there are approaches to stopping violence that can be systematic, predictable, that can help stop the spread of violence in the community.
The office was first organized in 2008. How has your work changed since that point of time?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of expansion in the office as to the type of activity that can be involved in violence prevention work. The office initially was primarily information gathering, report giving. Now there is a recognition of best practices around the country. There have been investments in violence interruption and intervention strategies that have been employed around the country. So, and we're doing a lot of that here in the city of Milwaukee, and a lot of that is being guided and led by the Office of Violence Prevention.
You mentioned violence interruption. What is that?
Yeah, so in many cases in the city of Milwaukee, we have a particular focus on gun violence, but we're looking at interpersonal violence as well as domestic violence in the community. And when those things happen, there are ways for us to get referrals from community members, from the police department, as well as hospital referrals that allow for trained people who have lived experience and some connection to the community, credible messengers, if you will, are trained to be able to build relationships with those people and primarily put a focus on stopping retaliatory violence, as well as helping that person heal from the violence that they experienced.
We are seeing some changes, some decrease in violence. You mentioned that gun violence is a particular problem that we have here in Milwaukee. Homicides are down for the first 6 months of 2023, but they're still at a rate that would outpace what we saw in terms of homicides back in 2019, prior to the pandemic. And non-fatal shootings are twice the rate of what they were in 2019. How do we begin to get this gun violence under control?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we've recognized just through our experience with this work is the tremendous amount of firearms that are floating around in the community. There's an unprecedented amount of firearms in the hands of younger and younger people. And we see with some of with the use of those firearms, that not only do we have easy access to them, but the capacity uh, of the magazines, uh, the clips that they're able to use with these firearms, give very irresponsible people the capacity to wreak havoc in a neighborhood that they just didn't have before. And so so it's a very concerning trend to see this happening across the country. And it begs, the question that do we need this many firearms in our community? And I know that this is a national conversation about having some type of responsible gun legislation that we need to push nationally. But there's a lot of things that we should be able to do even locally from the state level to keep guns out of the hands of folks that are not prepared to use to use those weapons responsibly.
Are there specific things you want the legislature to do?
Well, one, limit capacity of magazines, and the ability to sell those legally would help. There's no reason to have military grade weapons floating around in neighborhoods. Limiting those would be helpful. And requiring people who are storing weapons, traveling with weapons in vehicles, to lock them would be helpful.
One thing that MPD is doing this summer, the Milwaukee Police Department, is really focusing in again on curfew for young people who are underage. How does this impact the ability to help keep youth safe this summer?
Yeah, so one of the things that I really appreciate about MPD was the willingness to engage our office in structuring these. These types of efforts in the city. One of the things that I think that was a highlight for implementing the Summer Guardian program was to get parents to recognize their role in ensuring the safety of their children. I think too often we have passed off that responsibility to police officers, community-based organizations, and other entities for the responsibility of your children. And this was a community reminder that you too, parent, have a responsibility. There are supports that are out here. We want to be as accommodating and supportive as possible. We do recognize that some children, are not, following parental guidance. But there has to be an extra effort on behalf of parents to seek additional help in those types of situations.
What can we do now as citizens to help Milwaukee be a safer community?
Get in the game. I think that there is a number of things, volunteering, and participating in community groups where the goal is to get to know each other and take a sense of ownership in your neighborhood. So that's one. We're offering a number of community trainings, parental support seminars. We're helping people navigate the mental health system and take advantage of getting therapy and counseling, and recognizing when you have conflicts in your own family, to actually not just leave those unsettled, to actually go through a mediation or some type of de-escalation training, us, because that across the community we're offering, and we're making it easily accessible. So and take care of yourself. Recognize that you actually need to take care of yourself, both physically and mentally. I think that there's a sense of responsibility that we need to take in making sure that we're healthy, so that we don't continue generational trauma that we're seeing a lot of people go through in our community.
There's a lot of work to do, but there's a lot of good work that is being done. Ashanti Hamilton from the Office of Violence Prevention in the City of Milwaukee, thank you so much for being with us. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you for having this conversation.
Violence interrupters and credible messengers are important partners to break the chain of generational violence. Learn more about that program by visiting the Connect MKE YouTube page to watch our past feature about these programs. When we return, we'll visit with a Milwaukee veteran journalist turned filmmaker and learn about her new documentary that looks at segregation in the 1960s here in Wisconsin. Joanne Williams is next.